Welcome to Beyond the Business Card podcast.
Well, okay, it's worth giving it a go. Why not? And then someone said to me, hey, do you know what? You can earn £100,000 in your first year. I was like, wow, this is insane.
In today's episode, I'm joined by my business partner, longtime friend, and the co-founder of MCG Talent, Adam. Adam grew up as an only child, watching his parents work tirelessly for everything they had. They had put him through private school, which led him to grammar school and eventually to studying design. He landed a job at the product design company, but 6 months in, he was let go. And that's how he fell into recruitment. He quickly realized he loved selling and spent the next 10 years in creative recruitment. Then I came along. After plenty of conversations and Adam making sure I wasn't a spammer, we decided to launch in Asia, with Adam leading the market. The rest, as they say, is history. Adam's strategic vision has been a driving force behind MCG Talent's growth in APAC. Tune in as we dive into his journey, leadership lessons, and the challenges of running a business across different markets. So, Adam, very nice to meet you, see you. Welcome. Good to see you, mate.
It's good to see you too.
How's everything?
It's very good. What an intro.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, no, it's all good. It's good. It's good to see you. It's been, I was going to say it's been a while, but it's not been that long since I saw you last.
Do you know what?
Was it? I can't remember when you came to Hong Kong.
I came to Hong Kong a while ago, but because I talk to you so much, it's always becomes very confusing.
Yeah,
so,
it probably a few months. It probably has been a little while then.
Absence makes the heart grow fonder,
It really
my
does.
friend.
It really does. It really does. Absolutely.
So, look, what we do in this podcast is the whole point of it is to help people understand the journey of an entrepreneur. Okay. So in order to understand that journey, I think we need to know where they've come from. We need to know background. We want to know sort of anything, inspirations that people have had, sort of what's led them to become the person that they are today. So, you know, for me, I've always talked about the fact that I grew up in more or less a single family household. And I think not having my dad around was a huge influence into why I made the decisions I did in business, et cetera, right? And I think for everyone that I've spoken to, there's that trigger point in their life, or there's a lot of things that they can piece together that's led them to where they are. It'd be really interesting for everyone today to kind of just understand your origin story, where you come from, and I suppose what impacts you had in your early life that's led you to where you are today.
Yeah. So it almost sounds like a therapy session as well.
I think we could do this.
It might be with me.
I will charge for this, by the way.
Not a problem. So I don't even know where I could start then on this. But I mean, to give you a bit of an overview, I mean, you know this anyway, I'm a single child. I think sometimes there's that thing where people say, if you're a single child, you're a spoiled kid.
And which I would say about you.
Yeah, absolutely. But, you know, I wasn't born with a silver spoon in my mouth. And, you know, my parents are both two of the hardest working people I know. My dad was a Cypriot immigrant, came to the UK when he was very, very, very young, got thrown into a school, couldn't speak English. I think he went through about 4 different grades, still not speaking English until the teachers realised why he was so quiet. And then sort of started his career as a hairdresser's apprentice, just sweeping up hair and stuff and learning the trade before becoming a barber or a hairdresser, and then set up his own business, which I think I'm right in saying was one of the first mobile hairdressing businesses on the South Coast. So kind of created at that time, back in the 70s, a pretty unique business. It was called Hair on Wheels.
And did he cut your hair?
Not anymore. There's not much to cut. I cut my own hair. Do I do a good job? What do you reckon? Thanks, mate. It's very handy because you just literally do it all over like that. He set up the business and worked like such long hours. I remember him still sort of leaving the house at 6:37 and would come in sometimes at 10:30, 11, you know, in the evening. So it'd be long days, sometimes like 7 days a week. But he would always make that time for me as well. My mum also worked. So she grew up with a fairly, again, modest family life, house and stuff. And then worked in various jobs, from like a jewelry salesperson to I think she even did that job. What's that? The Avon Lady Calling.
Oh yeah,
Do you remember those?
door to door,
door to door and stuff like that, and various things. And then she was a teacher's assistant, and then sort of worked her way into the police force in CSI and stuff. So they've always both worked hard, but as a result of their hard work, they've been able to, I think, achieve a lot as well for people that never went to university or anything like that. So I think when people say, like, who do you look up to? I mean, it is my parents, and of my parents, my dad in particular, for his hard work ethic and things. And that's been instilled in me. So when I grew up as a kid, I wasn't sort of gifted a lot of things. I had to kind of work for those things. I was lucky enough to be given an amazing education. I went to a really good private school, and I remember being that kid at the private school where some of the other kids would get dropped off in Jags or whatever, and my mum would drop me off in like a little old Vauxhall Astra or something. And it was a point where I was also a little bit embarrassed, as you were at that age with the kids. So you're like, "Hey, mum, drop me off around the corner." So, all the other kids don't see your crappy car. But eventually, you were like, "Who cares?" You got your own little group of friends, and it was all good. But I could see, even then, I realised, or it was also implied as well, like, we are giving you a really good education here, and we're having to cut costs and other things. We couldn't do lots of other things that maybe other kids could do that were at the same school. I then was able to get into a grammar school, Bournemouth School for Boys grammar school, and that was quite a big thing, because I think it was also a problem. My parents were probably like, Jesus, thank God we don't have to pay for more education now. You passed your 11 plus. So went into that school there, and then worked my way through obviously all the different subjects. But I can't remember if it's your left or your right brain, the more creative one. But which one is it? Is your left brain? Or
I'm not creative at all. So
no. So whatever opposite brain is to yours. So I was really good at like English literature, the arts, design technology, and graphic design led. So all the teachers were saying, look, you're going to be a really good sort of designer. You should work in the creative industry. So I had that sort of instilled into me all the way through school. Passed the sort of all your, whatever you do, like your sixth form things, got you good grades, and then went into Coventry University as a transport and product designer course. Did it there. Did it for 3-4 years. Realised really quickly that I was nowhere near as good as like the other kids that were on this course. I was probably the best kid in my school, but clearly when you put all the best kids of every school together, I was not that good. Passed, still got a 2-1, and then did design for 6 months at a product design company in the north of England, and hated it. And I think they also didn't particularly like me, because like everything I drew looked the same. I just couldn't. It was like it was a learning and development pen. It was some sort of electronic pen company. I mean, how many designs of pens can you kind of come up with? So I got let go of after about 6 months, which I was quite grateful for. And then I just fell into recruitment. And I think it was at that point where somebody mentioned to me, hey, have you ever thought about a job in recruitment? And I was like, what is recruitment? I didn't even know what recruitment was. And someone explained it to me. I was like, okay, it's worth giving it a go. Why not? And then someone said to me, hey, do you know what? You can earn £100,000 in your first year. I was like, wow, this is insane.
The classic entry to recruitment.
Yeah, absolutely. You can earn £100,000 in your first year. So coming from somebody who obviously valued and appreciated the cost of things and looked at stuff, and I thought, wow, that's incredible. I could earn that sort of money. Obviously really quickly realized that's not what you earn in your first year of recruitment. But yeah, I enjoyed sales, because I was in my university breaks. I was selling used cars for a local car dealership. So I got the kick out of the sell and the transaction side of things. I did recruitment for the first year at a legal recruitment firm in Chancery Lane. Again, enjoyed recruitment, didn't enjoy the subject matter of helping necessarily lawyers. I didn't have any connection or affinity to them, no interest whatsoever. And then I applied for a job at a company called Purple at the time, which was one of the two best, back then, I think, creative recruitment firms around. It was a company called Purple and another company called Source, and they were kind of bitter rivals. And I joined Purple, worked my way up there, and then moved from Purple to join a company called Twist, which was set up by one of the co-founders of Purple eventually. Worked there for 4 or 5 years. And then you approached me. I remember. I still remember getting that call. I thought it was a spam call because I think I'd had a couple. I think I told you.
Yeah.
And you were like, "Oh, hey, I'm Justin. Blah, I'm calling from Dubai." I'm like, "Hey, okay, pull the other one." And then I was like, "Oh no, it actually does sound quite legitimate." And then we spoke for 4, 5, 6 months.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah,
back and forth. We met up at Soho House in London and stuff, and we got talking. It was a big decision for you, and I think initially you were looking to open an office, I think, in London.
One of my well-known failures. I did actually open up in
I
London.
know you did,
yes,
and I remember we went there to celebrate some awards that we were convinced we were going to win and didn't win any of them, but still celebrated like we'd won the awards.
We had a great time.
We had a really good time. No memory whatsoever. So we got talking for a long time, and I said to you, "Look, I'm going to do something. I want to do something different," because I think at that point I'd done recruitment for about 10 years, and it felt the same. So I thought, what can we do that we both, I think, would enjoy doing? And I think you also saw an interest in wanting to Asia. I thought that would be an exciting move for me as well. I guess, and then the rest is history.
So we.
That was a long intro. Sorry.
We went deep very quick.
We went deep very quick.
Yeah.
Did we cover a lot of topics?
We did.
You can probe into some of that.
No. So look, I think the interesting thing to pick up, obviously, your father was a first generation immigrant into. Yeah. So did he come with his parents as well?
Yeah. So and the rest of the kids and stuff. So
wow.
They came over.
Okay.
Yeah.
Not speaking a word of English.
No, he couldn't speak a word of it. And they came over. I mean, my grandparents were quite wealthy. So my grandfather had a lot of money. I mean, they had, when they first moved over, actually, they were actually quite wealthy. So they owned a lot of property near Kensington, near Harrods. They had property down in Brighton. They had property all over the place, actually. So I think they grew up next to the sort of presidential palace in Cyprus. So they have a lot of money when they came over. But what I don't think that helped was my grandfather's very bad gambling habit. So a lot of that disappeared very, very, very quickly. I mean, I as a kid, we kind of estranged from my grandfather
because of his gambling.
Just because he wasn't a particularly nice man.
Oh right.
Towards my grandmother and stuff, and eventually when they did get divorced, it wasn't the sort of thing to do. You don't divorce, even if you're getting smacked around a bit, you kind of put up with it and put on a happy face. But I think she was one of those people that eventually was able to kind of break away from that sort of toxic sort of relationship there. But I only remember my grandmother having a small 1-bedroom apartment in Southbourne on the south coast of the UK. Very, the property was only worth about £60,000, and that was it. All her jewelry had gone. The lifestyle that was of the pictures back in the 50s and 60s was definitely a time that had moved on. So when my dad came over and he had to start getting to a point where he was earning money, he had no handouts. He had to kind of earn and work for it. Didn't go to university, didn't have any funding, didn't have any financial help. So although the grandparents were wealthy at a point, that wealth again was superficial and it disappeared quite quick.
Okay. But that's a pretty amazing story with the old man, sort of coming in, not knowing to speak English, learning English, and then becoming an entrepreneur. Why hairdressing, by the way?
I don't know. I mean, back then, I guess it was one of the things you can go, what does everybody need? You need your hair cutting. Yeah. It's a bit like being an electrician or a plumber or something. There's certain trades that, even with AI and stuff now, it's probably get a computer to cut your hair or a robot. Yeah. Anyway. Yeah. So he did that. It was, again, the sort of thing that I think he did tell me the story. I can't remember. He told it to me so many years ago why he got into it and how he got into it. But it was a case of how can I earn some money fairly quickly? And he got a job and it's like, here, sweep the hair up. Clean up, do this, do that.
Yeah, and then it's just one thing led to another.
Kind of looking and going, hang about, I could probably do this and make more money if I did it myself. And then I think he started work for, do you remember that celebrity hairdresser, Trevor Sorby?
Yes.
Do you remember him? Yeah, so he worked for Trevor Sorby.
Right.
So he managed to get a gig with him and sort of learn the trade, I think, from Trevor Sorby. And then then just sort of decided to branch out on his own. And he a bit like this is probably where I get my love for cars and stuff from. So my dad always loved his cars and stuff, and he had it was a Ford Escort Mexico, which back at the time,
Mexico, hey,
yeah, but it was the proper one. It was like if you had like nowadays it would be, I don't know, like what's the best hot hatch Ford you could probably get, and it was like wow, this like bright red Ford Escort Mexico that you'd like rip around into, like go and cut people's hair. And then he bought a Nissan Skyline in the 70s, a pale green one that he bought, he said, literally before the oil crisis in the 70s. So he bought this car, and then the prices of petrol just went through the roof. He said it was the only car he ever owned. When you put your foot down, you could actually watch the petrol gauge slowly drop. This thing did like 8 miles to the gallon. So it was like, wasn't the best of purchases, but he's always liked his cars and stuff. But again, he's always been somebody who's also then taught me the value of looking after things as well. So he's not been that person that's ever, as you know, the value of things, because we take the mick out of each other.
I'm going to come on to this.
I'm sure you will. But I get a kick out of saving that 10 quid here or there. It's something that's always been there. And if you own and you have something, you look after it. You don't chuck it about and damage it, and you keep it. And if you keep it, it lasts a long time. These people that kind of go, oh, I go through a mobile phone every 6 months because I'm always losing mine or breaking it. I'm like, why? Why'd you have to break it? Look after it. So I think that's been kind of pushed into me as well. And it's really hard when you get to now our age to break away from that.
Very young.
I think I've learned, we're still quite, but it's difficult to, I think, move away from that. I mean, you've been really good in helping teach me to try and loosen up a little bit, because it's still tough though, isn't it? And I think I in turn have imparted some of that wisdom to you to also.
Yeah.
Not look after things, because you do anyway, but you know what I mean? Like that part where you kind of go, do you need to buy that? And you go, I probably don't. And you go, okay, well, there you go.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
no, it's interesting. I mean, I've always said to Helen and I talk about this a lot, because obviously with our kids, I think a lot of what I see our kids influenced by, and there's something I've picked up from what you've said, is not by what we say though, it's how we behave.
Yeah.
And you straight away picked up on the fact that your parents worked really hard, like they worked their socks off. And if there's one thing I can say, having worked with you for a long time, is that you work your socks off. Your work ethic is phenomenal, and that clearly has, just watching that has made a huge impact on your life, and that's something I've seen play out in real time.
Yeah.
To the point where I think sometimes you overwork, which you'll probably admit that you will as well.
I probably do, but again, I think it's because we both enjoy the job that we do.
Yeah.
I mean, people say to me like, oh, you're always working. I go, yeah, but I actually get a kick out of it. I enjoy it.
Yeah.
But I think with that, it does become quite difficult to then in turn sort of switch off, as you know. So like when we go away and you say, oh, I'm off to wherever, and I say, yeah, I'm off to wherever, you go, oh, you're not really on holiday, are you? You're always on.
Yeah.
So it's rare to have that time to switch off. I think the only break I've had in recruitment, I've done this now for 17, 18 years, I think, was probably that time between moving from the UK to Asia.
Yeah.
Because I was on gardening leave. I was probably at I feel my healthiest and my happiest in many ways that time. Because I didn't have any work stress, any work pressures. I couldn't work. I had no work to do.
Yeah.
So it was actually really, really refreshing. I do remember when I first came out here, because I came out to Dubai, didn't I, for about 3 weeks to do some sort of onboarding and meet the team and stuff like that. And I remember sitting down, and it was at the point where we had landlines, didn't we?
Yes.
And I had to make that first phone call, and I thought, God, how do I get back to doing this again? Like, what am I saying? Like, and I even remember like the first few, oh, hi, it's Adam from Twist, MCG, because I was like, from the old company, I had to get right, G. But it comes back pretty quick, like riding a bike. But yeah, that was almost a little bit scary that time.
But it's definitely made a huge impact on you. But the other thing that I just want to pick up on is obviously, and I can say this having got to know you, right?
Yeah.
And you are heavily influenced, it's clear, by your parents, and your parents have always stayed in Bournemouth, right?
Yeah. They've never moved anywhere else.
Yeah. And you're, I would say, of the people that I know, and quite a risk-averse character.
I
right?
am.
Yeah. Which I would say contrasts completely to the person that I called up saying, hey, do you fancy a job in London?
Yeah.
And your reply being, no, I quite fancy going to Hong Kong. Obviously, I'm just pressed the fast forward button on a lot of things there. But I've always been quite fast. That's one of the completely unpredictable. Like I would never predict. Now, having got to know you, it's always been the one thing where I'll go, wow, that's
so like, why Hong Kong?
Why? Well, it's just why Hong Kong? Why interest in making the move? Because it doesn't actually sit with a lot how you behave in many other ways. But you made this like some would, like other people. No one would. There's not many people that wake up and go, hey, you know what? I think I'm up for a move to Hong Kong.
But I think at that point I'd done enough trips out here or out there, and stuff with the company.
But something was obviously taking you that way.
Well, it was something that we were doing with work anyway. So I remember working with Twist, and we were having clients coming to us and saying, "Hey, can you help us in Asia?" Because at that point, it just didn't seem there were any decent recruitment firms operating in the space that we do, in that sort of creative communication space. So when they were contacting us about, can you help us? And then we said, yeah, sure, why not? Because you just said yes to everything. And then realized, well, actually, again, it's not that difficult and stuff. This was, again, at a time where LinkedIn wasn't what it is now and communication tools were not what they are now. So it was definitely, in a way, harder work. But in a way, because it was harder, if you were a good recruiter, you'd stand out. So we were getting sort of placements over the line with businesses remotely, and then that kind of justified the trips over there. So then we would do trips over, and I think I must have done about 6 or 7 Hong Kong, Singapore trips, and I had gone over enough to go, wow, this is cool, this is different, this is exciting. So I think, you called me up at just an opportune time, because I was meant to be going over.
Strategic, I think you find.
Was it strategic? Opportune. Lucky. It was just good timing, because I think I was literally in the process of moving over with Twist to set up that Singapore office for us out there. But then we clicked, and the alignment and the vision and the business and the connection, it all just seemed like a better fit, an upgrade, if you like. But it did. It really did, and that part, again, that risk averse part, I could have gone with the safe option of being, well, do you know what? I've worked with this other chap for a long time. I know what I'm getting into. I know the good bits and I know the bad bits. And I think it would be great fun, but I don't think it would have been a career defining move. Yeah. So I think that's what I saw. I think with you and the businesses it was there, I thought that's that risk part where I'm going, well, actually, if I am going to make this commitment, I am going to make this move, it's not going to be cheap. I've added it all up. This is what's going to cost me. It's how much, I've got to leave and set aside and do all this. Where do I have a better chance of being a success? And I felt that was working with you, with MCG. So it was a tough decision. I remember flying back and going to the office, and it was, hey, how was your trip? I was like, yeah, good. I need to have a word with you though. And then, yeah, go on. I'm really sorry, but basically I'm leaving. And as you can imagine, it went down like a hot potato.
Yes. Yes.
So, yeah, it was a tough decision that to do, but it was the right decision.
I'm sure. So for those listening, watching, sort of paint the picture. You've packed up. So how long were you in London for?
Oh, all my working career. I mean, like since I was, 22, 23. I mean, I must have done 10 years there?
10 years. So after a decade, packing up your life after a decade, moving to a completely new firm, stop over in Dubai, first of all.
Yeah.
Walk us through kind of that journey and what, let's talk about, because a lot of people will be wanting to know, how on earth can I go to a completely foreign land and set up a business from scratch? So if you wouldn't mind just just painting that picture for people.
So again, really quickly, I mean, being risk adverse like I am, I owned a property in the UK. I still had a mortgage on it. I literally put dust sheets on everything and kept it there, because I thought, do you know what, if this does all go tits up, because I don't know, it might do, I can at least come back. You know what, I can come back and I'll be a bit like, hey, it didn't work out, but I give it a go. I don't make any big decisions there in terms of selling a property or anything. And it was only upon really working, I think, with you in the business for about 6 months, I went, yeah, this feels good. And I was getting obviously the feedback that, yes, this is working, which is then what triggered then that proper move over. So I think that first 6 months, I was still a little bit, just keep it, just in case it all goes wrong,
Did you rent it out? I can't remember.
No. Again, you know what I'm like. I'm like, I don't want you don't move that. Just put it there. Don't touch it. So I was like, oh, what's all these fingerprints everywhere? So I just kept it all there. I'll tell you another story, but it's about Probably another time.
You can't say that on mic and not do it.
Oh, no, really quickly. So basically, I put. So when I did move, I put everything into storage.
Yeah.
Because again, I didn't know how long I was going to be out there. I thought, well, this might be a 2-year move, a 3-year move, right? That soon has become now 8 years. So all this stuff went into storage, of which I was paying about £2,000 a year in storage. So I paid about £16,000 to store all this stuff. I've got a property in the UK, which I've decided to take all that stuff out of now, put it into the property, and just kind of keep this property as a go back to the UK property as and when type scenario.
Yeah.
All the stuff comes out of storage. 90% of it has either been damaged, rotted, broken, gone mouldy, or is frankly just antiquated now to the point where I've literally paid £16,000 to store a load of crap. So 90% of it ended up going down the tip. It's just like, DVDs, CDs. Who has DVDs and CDs now? Yeah, but like 8 years. But me, I know I have a lot of them. I mean, they all went alongside a load of furniture, a load of stuff that was like just clothes. When you put stuff on, they go, well, that doesn't fit, or like I'm not wearing stuff from 8 years ago now. Yeah. So it all.
I'm sure it all fits.
It definitely does not. I was a little bit slimmer back then. So
you're a lot more successful now.
I am more successful. You keep reminding me. Thank you very much. So let's get back to the point of when I moved over. So when I moved, what was the question? When I moved over, what?
Just walk people through that move, packing up your life after a decade in the UK, moving to Hong Kong. So and the good, the bad, and the ugly.
The good, the bad, the ugly. So when I moved over, I did it, like I mentioned to you, with the move of this is either going to be a great success or a terrible failure. So I'll go over with a couple of bags and set myself up from scratch with minimal things. I thought at first I made a horrible mistake because I do remember moving into this service department, and it was the whole apartment was the size of the spare bedroom of of the house I owned, the apartment I owned. I could touch every wall and everything. I mean, people joke and say, yeah, right, you've been to it, you saw it.
I went and saw it.
I mean, I could literally stir pasta sauce whilst having a shower and go for a week. I mean, I've never known a room that was that small. It was so small. Didn't have two balconies.
Handy.
It was handy, yeah. I mean, like, it was like you had to be so careful. You get an item, you go, where do I put it? Because there's a small gap here for this. It was nothing. It was so small.
Good location, though.
Oh, cracking location. It was good. Yeah. So I think that was that first reality of like, wow, this feels different. But then that different.
And you have some nice neighbours as well, if I remember.
Gee, I can't remember.
Well, I mean, they seem very keen to want your business when you left them.
Oh, yeah. Because I thought, wow, girls are friendly here. Little did I know. Yeah, you remember that. I was so chatty.
Oh dear.
Yeah, I forgot about that. That was interesting. And then so I had like the reality check of, wow, this is what it's like here. But that was exciting for different reasons. And then started to kind of get traction that then became more of a footing there. But how did I go about doing business out there? I think I said to you, there's no point trying to pretend to be a business or somebody you're not in a totally foreign country. For me anyway. There are lots of recruitment firms that would try and trade off the fact that, hey, we've got this office in the Middle East and we've got these operations globally and we do all this, and don't really give some monkeys, do they? They don't care.
I think back in those days, I think that was the days when even if you recruited in the advertising market, or it seemed every business was kind of trying to put pins in the world. It was kind of globalization. You didn't have kind of a lot of the animosity that you have now. There wasn't, America was open, China was open, everything was open.
Because I remember when I was recruiting out there, it wasn't based on language experience. It wasn't based on,
globalization was kind of the agenda for everyone.
Back then, it just felt like it was about get me the best person that can do this job.
Yeah.
So that was actually really, really nice. So I think those first couple of years of working out there were really enjoyable. But for me, it was keeping the business and keeping my approach the same as what I had in London, which is you're either going to enjoy working with me, and if you do, great, let's work together. If you don't like my style, you don't like my approach, then there's plenty of other businesses you can go and work with. Because there were those businesses I was meeting with, and they were not used to somebody telling them, this brief makes no sense, or I can't work on this project. They were just expecting a yes sir, no sir type of approach. But I was like, well, I'm not going to scale a business and help grow.
To be honest with you, you were one of the first people that I worked with where that kind of honesty honesty to the point of, is it rude or is it rude, or is it just actually, I just appreciate this straightforward approach? I'd ever seen, because most people I'd worked in a PR and comms background. Everyone is delightfully tactful and polite in that industry. They are. They make a point of, even if you annoy with someone, they get a lovely email from you. And that's kind of everyone. It's very wishy-washy in many respects. And to a degree, when I was then trained in financial services, like the company that trained me in recruitment, even though I was working in our sector, they were all moving hedge fund managers. So it was very thorough, polite, detailed. And then I met you. And
also thorough and also polite.
No, absolutely. And of course, you are normally a product of the environment that you are. So everyone that worked for me, I trained them in a, yes, be firm, but always be very polite. And then you kind of came through, and it was a bit of a steamroller for many, for many people. I was like, wow, you got a lot of business on really quickly. I was copied into a lot of your emails, so I could see your brash style, and even because you got business on very quickly, and even the way you followed up on invoices was incredibly brash, and how if people moved a step aside from the terms of business that we had, you picked up on it. Whereas in Middle East, people sign terms and then just behave how they want, right? And it was great. I think for me, I actually learned a lot. I'm paying you a compliment here, by the way.
It's rare.
I actually learned
time and date stamp.
I actually learned a lot from the way you handled that, from those first sort of year and a half, when you were really going for it, because it was so different to anything I'd seen before.
Yeah, but I just think if you're entering into a business contract, you're not, to begin with, you're not friends with the people you're trying to work with. They some of them become your friends, don't they? But to begin with, you're always, as a recruiter, on the receiving end of the bad news. It's always your fault, isn't it? The person you placed dropped out. Your terms say you must do this, that, and the other. So, well, you know what? We should work also both ways. And I just feel there's no point being rude to people. You can be polite, but you can also still be direct and polite, can't you? I think. When someone says, "Can you help me on this?" I'm afraid I can't help you, but here's maybe somebody who can, or no, but let's keep in touch. You can still do that. I would never ignore people. I would never badmouth somebody. I would never do anything that somebody could look at, I think, and go, "Wow, he's a real nasty piece of work." Never, because I think me. I'm quite that level of anxiety or what's the word I'm looking for? It plays on my mind a lot. I think a little bit for you, but not as much as it probably does for me. I mean, there have been scenarios that we've had, haven't we, over the years, where I'll message you and I'll say, "Course, it's like keeping me up at night, it's really concerning me," and you'll be like, "It doesn't matter. Like, it's such a small thing. Who cares?"
Yeah.
But for me, those little things, they do care.
I think age has actually helped me with that. I think experience. Yeah. I just think probably just a few more years getting crappy decisions or having to deal with
I think again, when you go through certain scenarios where you suddenly go, you know what, it's not the end of the world when this happens, or people like to talk a good talk and they like to kind of say this, but are they actually going to do anything? No. And again, there's enough business out there for everybody, and the world's big enough and stuff. We don't need to be all fine over the same thing.
I get it, but I think the interesting thing for I suppose for those,
I drink this water for decorations.
No, please do. Well, you will be charged.
Okay.
No
big invoice.
No, but I think what people will be interested in is, look, there's this bolshy character from a decade in London, who's not afraid to call a spade a spade.
Who?
You.
Nice.
Bowls up into Hong Kong in his tiny little apartment, wants to make a mark on the sector, is firing, is being very straight with people. Culturally, how did this go down? How were you received? How did you find settling in there?
Well, like I said, I think it wasn't for everybody. There were a few businesses, but the ones that it wasn't for were the more locally led companies, those businesses that just had that local footing that we used to. Local recruiters saying, "Yes, sir, no, sir, yes, I can fill this." There was a firm that I met with, and they said to me, and it still makes me laugh, like a big international auction house, let's just say, and the talent team that I had to liaise with were all very local. And they said, we're struggling to fill this job. I knew what the job was. And I said, well, how many like CVs has the other recruiter sent you? And they said to me something like, they've sent me 100 profiles for this job. I said, 100 profiles, yeah. And I said, and how many of those have you interviewed? Oh, we've interviewed about 30. I said, well, that's your problem then. And they were, what is that? I said, well, either you don't know what you're looking for or the recruiter doesn't. But in some way, that system's broken. There's no way there's 100 people in Hong Kong that can do this job. And there's no way you should be interviewing 30 of them. And you could see their faces were like, oh, like this. And I said, well, I'm just telling you like what it is. I mean, do you want to fill this job? Well, yes, we do. It's urgent. I said, right. So why have you interviewed 30 people? They said, well, how many would you send us? 3? There's 3 people. I said, well, yeah, if you're lucky. I said, there's probably only about 5 people in Hong Kong that can do the job that you're looking for. So if I can send you 3, I've done pretty well. And there is only one job at the end of this, isn't there? Well, yes. I said, so if I send you 3, you've got a 1 in 3 chance of securing that person. They just couldn't get it. So I said, look, I can help you, but you got to kind of figure out how you can help yourself. Like, this is not going to be a relationship that's going to work very well, is it? So they saw the value from recruitment as in the business that was sending them loads and loads of CVs and following up on stuff and all that. It doesn't make any sense. Like, nobody wins in that scenario. What a crappy experience for everybody. And are you telling me that all those candidates would have got detailed feedback, detailed interview preparation, help, assistance? Of course they wouldn't. So the whole process in a scenario like that's broken. But then there were businesses that when I spoke to them, you could see their eyes opened up in a different way, which was, wow, no one's actually told us this. No one's actually sit down and actually advised us why this is wrong. No one's actually sit down and actually told us where we're going wrong or what we're doing well. And those are the firms that you work with, to this day, and they value your opinions and your style. So again, everyone's style is not for everyone, but you find what works for you.
Okay. And how... a lot of people will probably be wondering, you moved to Asia 2016, right?
Yeah.
Why Hong Kong? And give us a bit of Hong Kong then versus now. I think it'd be interesting to sort of paint a picture of what Hong Kong's like for people.
So I think we spoke about Hong Kong or Singapore, didn't we, as where we were going to open it up. And I think we knew that we wanted to have a presence in both locations. But I think back then I said, again, the opposite of being that risk-averse person, I said, let's do the harder location. Let's do Hong Kong, because I think HongOng will be a tougher business, tougher nut to crack in terms of...
But you preferred Hong Kong as somewhere to live as well.
Hong Kong, I think, was also cooler.
It was cooler. It is cooler.
It's a cooler city by far. Yeah. But I thought, again, from a business perspective, you're in one city that I think is going to be tough to work in. And if you can work there, you can work in Singapore, was my also assumption. I mean, Singapore's tough for different reasons as we know it now, but I chose Hong Kong for that. And also, yeah, it is a cooler city by far. And when I moved out there, I mean, I won't lie, different people say different things. It felt better than it does now.
Again, in what way?
Well, it felt like Hong Kong felt then like a more international city. There was more cultures, more collaboration. The involvement from China was less. I mean, it was still there, but it's less. And I think it's only for people that have lived there that can see the slow changes. I think if you've been there for too long, those changes probably take time to notice and see the difference. Whereas I did sort of, was it 2-3 years of the good times, and then we had those protests, which didn't really impact on the business that badly, but wasn't obviously great PR for Hong Kong. And then that was quickly followed by COVID, which was a real terribly badly managed mess for about 3 years that we've now come out of. I've seen like the good side and I've seen the bad side, and I think what we've come out with is okay, but it's not as good as it was before. And anybody who says it is, well, maybe that's their opinion again.
Mine's not. Give us like an example of what's different.
It feels more like another big Chinese city now, Hong Kong.
Not an international one.
Less international now. I mean, having said that, again, for everybody who says, oh, Hong Kong's losing people, yeah, it's losing people, but it's also attracting people for different reasons as well. It's just a different city. I mean, if you were to move there now, you don't have anything to compare it to. So it's not like you could move there and go, oh, this is terrible. It's an amazing place to go and move to. I think it's just a different place. It's just different. And I think because I've seen that difference, that's for me been interesting. Would I move there now again, knowing what I know? Yeah, I would, because it's still really cool.
Yeah.
And again, I think maybe with age, you kind of realize that life isn't greener anywhere else. You know, and the things that probably do bug me would bug me in another city or another location, and they're actually quite small things. But when you add them all up, and maybe that's again just me getting older and me becoming like a grumpy old man.
Yeah.
Where little things.
By the way. You are a grumpy old man.
No, I know, as you constantly remind me. But it's still an amazing city. It's just different.
Yeah. So 2016, you've obviously got Hong Kong up and running.
Yep.
Business is flowing in. It actually was a pretty decent time.
It was actually pretty good. I mean, again, I remember the first couple of months of. I think I'm right in saying I did a deal in the first 3 weeks of me coming out here in Dubai.
Yeah.
I remember sort of closing a deal. And I think everyone was quite like, wow, you closed a deal in the first 3 weeks of setting up the business. That was a nice little thing to leave on. Then I remember it being 2 tough months, because I remember making those calls and going, hey, it's Adam from MCG. And they'd go, who, from where? Like no one cared.
Yeah.
Whereas again, I was used to in London being, hey, it's Adam from,
Yeah.
No one cared. So then you had to make people care, didn't you? So you had to make them want to meet with you. You had to make that happen. And again, if whatever you're doing now, you'll see the results of in a couple of months' time. So I think I remember then it was November, me having a really good month. And I do remember you saying to me, if you have a good month in November, Adam, you can come to the Christmas party here in Dubai. And I think you might have been joking, because I know you now well enough. But back then I thought, oh God, I've got to have a good month in November, otherwise I can't go to the Christmas party, and that will look like a real failure. So again, there's that part of me that goes, I can't fail. I've got to make this work. So then I remember that month being really good, and I kept putting in the deals. And I remember even we had some staff members that were messaging like, wow, another deal. Like, wow, this is amazing. And I felt like, I think I came back to the Christmas party, I felt like a hero's welcome. I was like, this is amazing. It was that kept me going, you know. But I think in a way to the detriment of what I think a lot of people probably would have done at my age and level, which would have been to try to do a work-life balance. I think my work took over life balance. I was 7 days a week, weekends into the evening. You know, I just had this feeling of, it's good now, but it might go wrong tomorrow. So I've got to go to this meeting. I've got to make this happen. I've got to do this. So I think, and that's that work ethic that is quite difficult to try and break.
You see, I think what you've touched on there, though, is something I've heard myself say, and I also have heard, you know, now I've spoken to a lot of other entrepreneurs. You have a degree of fear. I think fear drives me, right? Fear. I think having a level of anxiety, to a degree, dialed, isn't a bad thing, right?
Yeah.
It's just how far you you turn the dial, right?
Yeah.
And I think I don't think that's. I think that has propelled you on clearly to success, but it's knowing when to dial that back up. And I think that's one of the things that many other people, and including myself, can often struggle with. But one thing I think it's important one thing I noticed from when we diversified the business from Middle East to Asia is that we then had an unexpected shit show happen here in the Middle East. And for those that were here around the 2016 time, they'll remember this, that the oil price had collapsed from like $100 a barrel down to about sort of 20, and it happened, and it hugely impacted this region. And it didn't happen overnight. It was kind of like a slow unwinding, and anyone that lived in the Gulf during that period will tell you that kind of 2016 to up until COVID, really, that the population was slowly shrinking, and it was actually quite there was a bit of a lull in the economy. House prices collapsed. So it was a very, you know, for us as a business, actually, and you doing so well in Asia, I tell this story many, many times, and you've heard me. It essentially gave us.
We've both, in a way, I think, over the years, bailed each other out.
Yeah, it diversified. That having a diversified workforce, I all of a sudden saw it. When we set it up, I thought the orchestra would always play together. Of course, what happens is one bails out the other.
I think we had 1 year, 2022, where even that year, I think it was still more Asia again. That was a year again with Asia helping. But yeah, it's almost like, it feels like an engine with two pistons, doesn't it? They don't ever kind of go in unison, and they're back and forth a little bit.
Much like at the moment, China China has slowed down, and I think everyone knows that the Gulf countries are doing quite well right now. And but what I'm interesting for people is that this has just changed since we've had the two regions running. One has always, as Adam's rightly said, one has always kind of helped the other out. And that's been great from keeping the business going, from keeping everything safe and secure.
And I think also for staff, isn't it? Because we've had scenarios where we've had people move.
We've moved a lot.
Yeah. Because they're both quite transient cities, aren't they? So for a lot of people, they do 3-4 years maybe, and then they go, oh, where else next? So we've had a few people move with varying success from Dubai to Asia, haven't we?
Yeah.
So some who have done better than others. I can't remember if we've had anybody from Asia move to the Middle East.
No, we haven't.
No. Okay. But that's been quite nice to be able to offer that, I think, as a solution to somebody, another stepping stone.
Yeah. Agreed.
Which is good.
Agreed. So what's been tell us what's been the highs and what's been the lows of living in Asia, having a business in Asia? Share with us the good, the bad, and the ugly. Don't let's just go like a top 5.
don't mince your words. I think the pros there are loads. There are loads. I probably can't even list them all off here. I mean, it's an amazing region to live and work and to experience. The people are amazing. The food is great. It's just an amazing place to live and work. And I think anybody who's lived and worked there, not gone there for holiday, not gone there even for a business trip, only those people I think can genuinely testify to how cool it is. And I think you're going to have your preferences to where people enjoy living. So there's always going to be that Hong Kong's better than Singapore, Singapore's better than Hong Kong, or then you're going to have those people that like Thailand.
What is the big difference though between Singapore and Hong Kong?
They're just too competitive. It's like kind of like comparing, I don't know, like Man City and Arsenal or something. I don't know. Like people are always going to have their preference, like what they think is better.
Because I lived in Singapore. They're completely different.
You've seen both.
Yeah.
I mean, Singapore for me, from what I'm told, feels more like a Dubai. I mean, it's great if you've got family and so on. It's better probably for kids. But again, that maybe is pivoting a little bit now where it's quite difficult to live and work in Singapore as a foreign national because of visa quotas and also the school application process and the cost of those things. So the cost is becoming now quite prohibitive. So maybe now we're seeing more people interested in going to places like Thailand or the Philippines or somewhere, or in Indonesia, to experience maybe a better way of life and work. But Hong Kong's like Hong Kong feels like a real gritty city that's been born out of tough times and a lot of repression, and they've kind of been the jewel in China's crown for a long time, and it's gone through its transitional changes now. The days of the 80s people, in their linen suits and Rolls Royces and
you would have been great in those days, by the way.
Loved it. Definitely, in my opinion, better days. Don't quote me on that because apparently you shouldn't say that, but they probably were. But it would be it's just a very, very different city, isn't it? It's like an Asian New York versus Singapore, which is more of an easy way. And if you've never been to Asia before and you're going to move there with your family, where are you going to go? You're going to go to Singapore. Everyone speaks English. It's an English first city. It's easy to get about. I always enjoy those business trips to Singapore because they never feel tough and taxing. I think if you're in Singapore and doing a business trip to Hong Kong, you'd come back and go, Jesus Christ, that was exhausting. So living in somewhere that's more exhausting, but you can find your kind of your chilled spots, and it's got beaches and it's got like 250 islands, and you can go hiking, you can go water skiing, you can do diving, you can do so much in somewhere like Hong Kong, whereas I think Singapore's a little bit more limited.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what's been the tough parts?
So, COVID.
Yeah.
I mean, I won't lie. I mean, I talk about it still quite a bit because I think like people coping with some sort of PTSD, you feel that you have to vent it still now and again.
I mean, you guys were on, it's till March 2023, right?
Good knowledge. You've done your research. Yeah, it was. Yeah.
Well, I was.
You were there. Well, yeah,
Yeah.
but I was telling you about it.
Yeah.
It was horrific. I mean, we still had regulations around masks and having to wear them, March 2023 or something. And there was no communication from the government as to what's happening and where it's, what's going to change. And it was so poor. It was so poorly communicated. And then the biggest issues were it seemed like it was never going to end because the government kept putting this rhetoric of, we're looking after you and the citizens, that's why we're going to keep these rules and things in place. And I was watching for years, like Formula One, football, rugby, whatever, like people traveling around the world and everyone else is living their normal life. And I'm going, what the hell? And I think it got really close. I think I was at that point of a breaking point. And I think I was tarnished a little bit with Singapore because I know you didn't have the best of experience towards the end of that time that you had in Singapore. And I thought, this could be the point where I just go, sod it, I'm done. I can't cope with this any longer. And thankfully, it was Macau who I think suddenly went, you know what, we're going to sod these rules, we're going to open up. And Hong Kong had been banging on about we're going to keep these rules. And it was within 24 hours, they went, oh yeah, us too. We're good, actually, we're going to now. And it was such a sigh of relief. But even after that, you still had at least 6 months, and maybe even a bit more of that ease. It was that nervousness.
I flew on the April, by the way. That's how I know it.
Well, yeah, but it was weird going on the bus where I was like, I'm not wearing a mask because I don't think I have to. But there's a lot of people still wearing a mask here and they're giving me filthy looks for not wearing a mask. There were those bits where you'd go to a restaurant, they still have those plastic screens that separated you from the next person.
Yes, I remember that when we came in April.
Because the owner was a Chinese owner, they were going to keep those things there because it's up to them. They can do what they want to do. But they believed obviously still that COVID was around, so they were going to keep those things in place. But that's, that restaurant's gone now. It's gone.
22 ships?
Yeah, it's gone. Yeah, I walked past the other day. It's closed down. So it has affected the city in that respect, and those people that lived through it, I think, will testify to how tough that was. And tough for those people that lived on their own, tough for those people that have families. It was just really tough. So that, I think, for me was the worst part about living in Hong Kong. But thankfully, that's gone.
Yeah,
cast to history books, and we move on.
Okay. And I think just to help people understand, if you're someone in London right now and you are keen on getting a job in Asia, how difficult is it to do that now versus, say, a 2016 when you first moved out there?
It's tougher. It's tougher. It is tougher. It's because for different reasons. I mean, if we use, say, Hong Kong and Singapore. So Singapore, it's tough because you need to compete now against the visa quotas, don't you? They're driving a lot of those initiatives to hire Singaporeans or PRs, and then also you're competing against all the people that are already in region or in Singapore that are qualified that do what you do. So why is someone going to hire you? It's really tough. The Hong Kong, you can kind of get a visa as long as you don't have a criminal record. You're kind of like, come on in, it's not a problem. So that's actually quite nice. That's pretty good. But then you're faced with the fact that, do you speak Cantonese or Mandarin? No, right? You're back of the queue then, because it's become, again, a language requirement that's almost more of a necessity now. If you're fairly junior, and by that I mean anyone with a couple of years experience up to maybe 10, 12 years experience, you're going to find it tough because there's a lot of those people that do those jobs already in market, aren't there? The more senior you are, the more unique you are. Therefore, you might be a easier hire to move for a business. But again, that requires a company that goes, I actually really want someone not in region to want to come out here. Now, we've done a few of those relocations, haven't we, this year with some of the big ad groups where they'd lost a lot of, let's call it, international expatsy type talent because of COVID, and they wanted to bring people back to those companies to make them feel more unified as a Western focused or originating brand message and office. So we've helped move those people. And that those were nice projects to work on. But honestly, for every person that puts their hand up and says, I'd be up for a move, you got to join the queue. I don't think it's a lot different now to the Middle East as well.
Yeah.
Where you guys were like, with Saudi years ago, you probably couldn't pay people to want to go there. People were, I'm not sure. Now it's like, everyone's like knocking on the door going, is there any jobs in Saudi?
Yeah.
And it's like, join the queue.
Yeah, I mean, the Gulf has probably taken on a lot since, I've written about this quite a few times. So because the Eastern hubs have tightened up, a lot of people who are in the Eastern hubs and might not be getting their visas renewed are now looking to move to Dubai, along with, Dubai and the rest of the Gulf, along with so many other parts of the world because of the economic downturns, because of, unfortunate wars, etc. So all eyes feel like they've come on here. So, but there's a queue now, and you need regional experience to become a premium. And that's
and you have a visa situation here as well, where it gets renewed every year or 3 years, or
getting a visa is not an issue at all. Getting a visa in the Gulf,
once you have it, it doesn't get kind of like
in the UAE. I'm going to talk about it's easy. In Saudi, very complicated. It reminds me a lot of Singapore in many respects. In fact, it may be a little bit harder, and the other countries the same.
Yeah.
The UAE, though, they've made it quite simple to get a visa.
So it's a little bit like Hong Kong in that respect, isn't it? But over here, you guys don't get the permanent residency side of things.
Golden visas.
Golden visa, but even that's only valid for
10 years. 10 years.
So the nice thing with, say, Hong Kong is if you've been there for, I think it's 7 years, like I've now been there, I'm now a permanent resident, which is always feels like a badge of honor that you get. But you have to do 7 years of continuous employment to get that visa, to get that permanent residency. And then in order to keep it active, you just need to go back once every 3 years if you were to move on as well. So that's quite nice. But in Singapore, it's really tough. There's people that have been there for 14, 15 years contributing to the economy, and then they might just not get their visa renewed because of the quotas of the company they work for. And then they're essentially made redundant. And then they've got, 30 days or something to get out of the country. I mean, it's pretty brutal, isn't it? For those people, especially when you've got, kids in education or whatever it might be. I've just put a house, I've signed up this. I mean, again, so I think living overseas is so exciting for a lot of reasons, but it can also be obviously a little bit daunting for people. And
I think you just, as long as you're always aware of all these things, you can plan for it.
Sure.
Look, we'll sort of wrap things up shortly, but I'd be very curious to know, like, obviously it sounds like it's been a wild, fun, amazing journey. And obviously I've shared a lot of it with you, and there's been quite a lot of wild, fun nights as well. Which, that's
not for this.
Well, actually, the best one still is when I went to see Adam and we had dinner, and we had dinner, which was all very civilized. We then decided to go to a nightclub, which perhaps wasn't as civilized. And I, in my wisdom, decided I was going to stay up most of the night to catch my flight.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
You're talking about a different story. I thought this was going to go down another route.
No, we're not going down there.
No.
Anyway, in the club about 3 a.m. realised I actually don't have my bags with me anymore, which had my passport, tickets and everything like that with me. And lo and behold, we managed to get a cab, go back to the restaurant that was closing down, and there was
your bag. I do remember that.
Yeah.
And that just goes to show how safe and secure Hong Kong was.
Yes.
Yeah, I do remember.
And when I picked up my bag, what did I say?
We're going out. He was so excited. I mean, it was like the president carries the nuclear football.
Yeah.
I mean, it had everything in it. It had the checkbooks, the passport, the credit cards, the financials of the business, everything. And I remember being in the back of the car with Tom at this point. You were in the front. I was saying, Tom, no chance that bag's there. That's definitely gone, isn't it? And we were like, no, mate, it will be there. Don't you worry, because you were panicking. And we turned up in the car at the front like that. You ran out. I was like, it's gone, hasn't it? It's gone. And then you just came out, you've got it. I was so happy for you. I wasn't that, because I think I'd mentally switched off. I was like, right, I'm going home now. And then you were like, let's go out. I was like, oh, bloody hell. Here we go. There were a few of those nights.
Yes, yes.
But some great stories.
Yeah, many great stories.
Many good ones.
But I suppose what's some of the tough parts of being out there? What anything that you feel that
I am close to my family back in the UK, and I'll obviously miss them, and I think it's a funny one. I think like people can sometimes, you post like pictures on LinkedIn, Instagram, whatever, you send to your friends, your family, of the good things, don't you? You always tend to show, look where I am now, look at this is nice. But what they don't see is all the stuff that's also infuriating or tough. And to try and make people understand that, you are living as a guest in somebody else's country. You're not from there. As nice as people will be to your face, you're not local. And there is that language barrier as well. So, if you are one of those people that can speak another language and you pick it up really quickly, I'm just rubbish with languages. So I can't speak Chinese, I can't speak Cantonese. You definitely get those scenarios where it's just go, guys, this is difficult, this is hard.
How's your Thai?
Fluent. No, it's not at all. But again, I think Thailand's an interesting one because it's set up, I think, so well for tourists and they're so welcoming there that learning English. Yeah, everyone kind of, you can even if it's not great, it's still good, and then people make the effort. Whereas I find in somewhere like Hong Kong, they just don't want to make the effort. If they, it's just, I can't lie, it's too difficult. So the amount of times I get shooed away, I had to go to a pharmacy to pick up something one day, and they were just like, forget it, go to another pharmacy. I mean, but I'm really quite ill, just go away. So you just kind of go, yeah. But imagine that in the UK now.
Yeah.
So it's those little things that sometimes can be a little bit difficult, and you miss sometimes those creature comforts of home. Yeah, the cost of living is also extortionately high. I know people say the cost of living and stuff in the UK is high now compared to the cities that we live in, we operate and we work in. It's got to be a fraction of that. I still believe. So there's lots of pros and cons, but so far the pros outweigh the cons.
Yeah. And would you recommend it to anyone? Like, what would you say? Like, if anyone wants to do it,
I wouldn't recommend it to everyone. No, because I think it depends on them and their personal situation, their goals, just who they are as also an individual as a person. Those people that sometimes go, I'd love to move out to Asia, and they've done one full moon party in Thailand when they're 18. I mean, it's quite a different experience to live and work somewhere. So I think if you are serious about doing it, you need to go and do some exploratory trips, and you need to try and do a few exploratory trips that aren't the glossy touristy trips. You need to kind of get to feel what it's like to live in a city a little bit, and dig a bit deeper. And then if you do that and go, yeah, this is exciting, it's right for those people. You can have that very expat life if you want in somewhere like Hong Kong, and you can live on the island and live in mid-levels and work in central and see basically a 2 kilometre square.
Sounds great.
Yeah. That's what you do every time you come over. You only see Soho House with me. But no, you're actually pretty good. But you know how those people, they do that and they go, I'm the Hong Kong expert. Okay, but you've only seen like 2 kilometres of the island. I mean, you're not really seeing anything. But if you also want to live that lifestyle, you got to have some deep pockets, because it is expensive to do all of that if you want to have that. But then if you're going to do that, why move to Hong Kong?
Which again goes against you being quite a frugal chap.
I am still frugal.
Living in such an expensive place. Oh, wow. I mean, how have you lasted so long?
Yeah, well, because what I've done is I've moved far out, as you know, from my bus journey. Every day, But I've done that because I've also gone, it's not going to be a place I'm going to live in forever. I don't see the point in spending an extortionate amount of money on rent somewhere, and I can probably have a bigger place and be further out. It just happens to be over an hour's commute every day into the office on the bus. But I know you take the mickey out of that, but it's like a big...
Well, yeah, but I mean, what I will say is you've built, Adam, probably a recommendation that I would give to anyone is spend the money that you make as an expat wisely. Okay. And Adam certainly has followed that. You've built quite an interesting property portfolio in the UK, haven't you?
Yep. I have.
So property's been kind of your investment area.
Yeah, it has. I mean, again, from my folks, I mean, they've always believed in that. I mean, I've had people that have said to me, you should put your money into this, put your money into that. I don't know. I mean, bricks and mortar. It's probably, again, a little bit maybe old fashioned, but it works. I mean, I don't understand the space in which a lot of people maybe want to invest their money. It seems too volatile. And I think for me, this makes sense,
You bought up half of Bournemouth in the 8 years you've been in Asia.
Correct. I might get some streets named after it. Yeah, exactly. So, Toctan Towers.
Toctan Towers incoming, guys. Incoming.
100%.
1 and 2 bedrooms. Good price.
100%. But yeah, I mean, I think, again, that's helped a little bit. I mean, I know a lot of people that, again, have done that expat lifestyle and they've earned really well. And then they have nothing to show for it. And I think that feels a bit sad.
Yeah.
They've obviously had an amazing time.
I can't remember any of it.
Or look back on the photos with fond memories.
Oh, Dubai is full of like people who just come here, and there's very few. And I think the worst of this, the Brits and the Irish. I'm going to say it, but people who come here and sort of, and you've seen it play with staff that we've had as well.
But if you're going to come out for a year and you go, do you know what? I just see this as me earning some money tax free. I'm going to have a great time, going to have a laugh. It's sunshine every day. But as soon as you go past that, maybe that first year or two, and you realise that actually there's a lot of money that can be earned here, but you've got to work hard. And I remember there was a client of mine that said to me about relocating somebody from London to Singapore. They said, you realize that this is not just like gin tonics and palm trees and stuff, and we all work and live as hard as it would be to live and work in somewhere like London, but just with a shit ton more humidity and heat.
And a few gins there.
And a few gins and tonics and palm trees, which make it nicer. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm looking out the window now and it's sunshine. It's beautiful here, and it's the same in Hong Kong this time of year. It's amazing time of year to go to Hong Kong. It's 27, 28 degrees. Back home in the UK, it's 12 and cloudy and rainy. No, thank you. And I think those would be the things that when you talk about the pros and cons, that for me, I like outdoors. I like the sunshine. I would struggle to go back to the UK and have 6 months of cloud and rain.
Well, Adam, it's been lovely chatting to you, mate. Very nice chatting to someone who I know so well as well, which is great. If anyone wants to reach out to you, is LinkedIn the best way to get hold of you?
LinkedIn is always the best way. Like you, I seem to live on it, so all the details all on there.
Everyone will know your face from LinkedIn, I'm sure.
Many a selfie.
Selfie. With
That's the one. 100% with a massive long arm.
There we go. Been a pleasure, mate. Thanks a lot for coming on board.
Absolute pleasure.
Cheers.
Thank you.